We could just take our seats, we'll get started. Thank you very much. For those of you who haven't got a chance to meet me yet, my name is Christopher Ludwig. I'm the editor of the Automotive Logistics group of magazines, and very glad to have you back with us for our second session of the day. The next two sessions actually are going to be looking at plant logistics and material flow, particularly things like trends in delivery methods, labor management, outsourcing, and design efficiency. So our presenters are going to give you a lot more detail and facts and figures, but of course we all know China is significant right now, not only because of the huge number of new plants that are being built, whether in Ningbo, Changsha, Chengdu, or as far west as Urumqi, but also because it's simultaneous with rising labor costs, transport, and equipment costs. So obviously in building a plant or designing a plant and the logistics, the latest technology and efficiency, all is very, very important, perhaps more so than ever. So between this session and the next session, we've got some really interesting presentations and speakers from car makers and academics and consultants and providers to give us a chance to talk about some of the main issues there. As I mentioned, it's not just the plant itself, but obviously it's the supplier footprint, it's the packaging, it's the delivery method to the line, whether it's Kanban, sequenced kitting. So I think we're going to talk across some of those trends, what's happening now, what the philosophies behind some of the different manufacturers in China right now. This morning now we have two speakers. We're very fortunate to have Mr. Zhou Zhou, who's responsible for plant logistics at Shanghai Volkswagen's new Ningbo plant. I think it's been open about 6 months now. So really happy to have him with us to get an insight into what's happening there, one of China's obviously most important manufacturers. And then we're also joined on stage for a presentation by Dr. Martin Lockstrom, who's a visiting professor at the Nordic International Management Society and has been in China nearly 10 years, I think, in consulting and research, mainly in supply chain purchasing. So very interesting perspective there. I think the new school is based in Chengdu, which is obviously a very important manufacturing region. So we'll have really two interesting presentations. We'll have plenty of time for Q&A, which we can carry over into the next session as well. So I'd like to invite Mr. Zhou now for his presentation. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Zhou Zhou. I'm senior manager in Shanghai Volkswagen logistics branch, responsible currently for Ningbo plant logistics. I need to have a little explanation because my presentation was prepared for the afternoon session, so it's mainly focused on the innovation of logistics. But anyway, I think it's 80% the same content. So yeah, let's see. So the next. First of all, give you some backgrounds. That SVW, we are developing very fast. I think not only SVW, other OEMs also. This chart shows how many months we reach the 1 million volume. The first million volume, we take 13 years to reach. But the latest 1 million volume, we take only 7.5 months, which we reached 10 million volume in total SVW in November of last year. With the fast development of the volume, we built the new plants very quickly. We can see that from Beijing plant, we built in SOP in 2012, and the Urumqi and Ningbo plant SOP last year. And the next year will be Changsha plant, and very soon we will announce some new plants in the future. I give you some background of Ningbo plants. In the Ningbo plants, we are the standard plants. We have capacity of 60 JPH, which means we produce one car in 1 minute. The total capacity of the year will be maximum 360,000 cars. Our product, currently we are producing a Skoda Super Facelift and Octavia Nachfolger. Well, the new generation Octavia is the first MQB car in SVW, which will be published in the Beijing Motor Show. And the next car, by the end of this year, we will produce the new midsize coupe, which is the brand new car worldwide in Volkswagen brand. The milestone, we start construction from January of 2012, and the opening ceremony, which means we start the serial production from October of last year. This is a record of Volkswagen Group that so fast a new plant can be launched. So before discussion, the original topic is innovation, but I think my first target is to roll out a new plant in such a short term and with the challenges. The major challenges I faced 2 years before is, first of all, is the fast rollout of new plants of SVW, which means for the whole organization, we are short of people in general. And the dispersed locations. Before, in the past, in 10 years before, we have only Anting location, and now we have Yizheng, Ningbo, and we already have Urumqi, and very soon Changsha plant will be launched, which means the supplier is no longer close to our plant. This will be the new challenges. And new people. In my team, the average age of people is below 25 years old, and you can see that 77% of people are below 25 years old. And the new zone, the Hangzhou Bay new zone, if you have never been there, you will not believe that 2 years before, at the place of the supplier park and our plant, it's just like what you see here. And how we can achieve now, we already SOP according to the milestone, and we are the record. How we achieve that? This is the first topic I faced in the 2 years before. And for the new plant, we also have some opportunities, because there are something we can only be influenced when we are starting a new plant. It's very difficult to change after SOP. For example, that's for the supplier park planning and for the infrastructures in the plant. And this chart illustrates the relationship with the cost saving potential with the time. When the time is closer to SOP, it's more difficult to save the cost. I also say that the logistic cost has already been determined 80–90% before our start of production, because our supplier base already determined, our infrastructure is already determined. What we do, so in the past years, traditionally we start logistic planning probably 6 to 9 months before. After the nomination of the supplier, we plan the routes, we will define which inbound method will be used. But at that time, the supplier location already decided. But what we do now, this is not only for Ningbo plant, I mean generally for Shanghai Volkswagen Logistics. Now we try to have early involvement. We try to involve 16 to 24 months before SOP. We make some investigations, we make cost analysis. We are introducing some new methods of the inbound. And then we will influence for the nomination. We will also influence for suppliers' decision of the location. With all those efforts of the early involvement, we have a dramatic savings from logistic cost. This is one illustration chart. Okay, sorry, I should not show the numbers, but you can see it's the 70% drop down of the logistic cost compared with the original cost after the early involvement. With these years, our inbound methods has been developed dramatically. In the past, before 2009, so the major delivery method is by the supplier itself. And then we try to make more GIT, and we try to make the area forwarding consolidated. And then we introduce supplier park and the consolidation center. And in the future, in Urumqi, we already have the inbound methods of railway, For Changsha, we will have for the deliver from the river, and also we have the consolidation center. Also for the inbounds, we try to make the visibilities transparency. The supply park is one major issue in the introduction of a new plant. In Ningbo plant, we have in total 2 million square meters in the supply park. Currently, it's about 50% of the lands are occupied. What I want to enhance is we start the planning and the construction and the production. We are synchronized with CPH. So the key suppliers, they are essential to the success of the OEM plant because those suppliers material, they need a very long test period, and according to the Volkswagen standard, they have to deliver the sample parts from the final plant. For example, for the bumpers, for the seats, and for the cockpits, so all those suppliers, they must build the plant on time, and therefore we can meet our milestones of our own plant. And therefore, we in Shanghai Volkswagen Logistics lead this project, and we highly involved in the planning, construction, and even supporting the suppliers a lot. There are something I cannot imagine before 2 years. For example, for the new zone, as you already see, so there are very few facilities. The first problem we met is how we built the plant, because in Hangzhou Bay, the earth is very low. We need to fill about 2 meter high earth before we start the plant building. But we need to fill the 2 meter high with the 2 million square meters in very short term. Such kind of things, the suppliers, they cannot do by themselves. OEMs, we need to coordinate them with the governments. And there are some other things we cannot imagine before was the suppliers, they cannot find even a dormitory in the new zone. That these things can never happen in Shanghai or in Nanjing, in such mature cities. So for supply park, in order to ensure our OEM's milestone, we need to give all efforts to help them to launch, to build the factory, and to launch from the new plant. But with all those efforts, we already get benefit. For Ningbo plant, more than 55% of the inbound volume are coming from the supplier park. And because of supplier park, the location, it's very easy to make the integration. It's 100% GIS, just in sequence or just in time supply to our plant, which makes the logistics cost very low and with the very low inventory level. Yeah, this is the overview of Ningbo plant volume distribution. So I will not go detail here. Yeah, talk about the logistics facilities. One background, how we roll out so quick for the new plants. One big thing behind is we have the standard plant. Beijing plant was the first standard plant in Volkswagen Group in China, and the Ningbo plant is the second in SVW. Therefore, we can quickly copy the standards from Beijing plant. We can also have the lessons learned. For the standard plant, there are many know-hows behind. For example, we already consider all the flows. We separate the material flow from right side to left, and outbound flow from here to outside, and the people flow from the source to the north. And all the flows inside already considered. There are many know-hows inside. And we integrate the infrastructures we call LOC, Logistic Optimization Center, and the supermarket, which I will mention later. Those infrastructures help us to reduce our in-house logistics cost and make the in-house logistic operation more smoothly. Here, for the new in-house logistics concept, we have our standards. When the material comes, there will be LKW, which means the truck waiting center. Then we will allocate the dock to the LOC. Then in LOC, we will make the route in the Bahnhof, which we call the small training center, to deliver to the assembly shop. And then there are some parts delivered directly to the line. There are some parts delivered to the supermarket. We make the sequencing, we make the kitting job, and then deliver to the line. And with all those infrastructures integrated inside our plants, with no external warehouse, we saved many logistic operations, such as the forklift loading, unloading, and the short shuttle transportations, which makes the process very lean. The facilities in the process, they support each other. In Ningbo plant, we implement the standard packaging of SVW standards. About 20% more standard compared with other plants in Ningbo. We implement some new technologies. This kind of light gross containers, which is foldable. Now in the assembly shop, there are more than 90% of the containers are using this technology. And we cancel some old standards in Ningbo plant, which do not fit to the truck size of SVW standards. And for all the small containers, we call KLT, we implement the standard pallet and the cover, which will help the inbound loading rate can be improved. In in-house logistics, we make some automation jobs. One is the AGVs, automatic guided vehicle. We implement 14 routes with 82 AGVs in Ningbo plant. We save in total 16 positions for each shift. In Ningbo plant assembly shop, you will see anywhere these kind of small vehicles to collect the materials from the dock and deliver to the line and then return the empties back. And because we have the technique to charge them on the way, so we do not need to interfere them. They will work 24 hours as long as our assembly shop is in operation. We also try to make some innovations in the empty container sorting. I think from my point of view, this is the first practice in automobile industry. We implemented such things. We have conveyor systems. Then when the empties return from the assembly shop, and the workers just put the empties in the conveyors, just like in the airport, we put the luggages. Then the workers will put those containers, they will stack them, yeah, and then deliver those stacked containers out. With such kind of innovation, we help to increase the efficiency, reduce the 2 people each shift. Also, we realize ergonomics. The workers, they don't need to bend to collect those empty containers. Also, we avoid the damages when the people drop those containers. And with this implemented, because the people and the traffic flow are separated, in the operation is more safe. Besides all those new innovations, I need to enhance that the new measurement skills are also very important. We start to have the standard training center from the Beijing plant. In Ningbo, we implemented 2 training centers. One training center is the Volkswagen Group standard. It's more for the introductions. All the new employees, they understand the philosophies, the concepts, the new logistic concepts. And the other one we invented from Ningbo plant, we implement all the process in the training center. And therefore, with all those new employees, when they come into the process, they can be trained in very short term to probably 80–90% of maturity. So this is essential. And there are some background things. In Ningbo plants, we have more than 95% of employees from other provinces. So the turnover rate is very high. I think it's the highest in SVW plants. So therefore, the new employees, they need to get matured in very short term. This would be essential. For other plants, they have time to learn and very low rates of turnover, so they can live with that. But with Ningbo plant, if we don't do that, we will not survive. Also, as a benefit of the standard plants, we start to make lessons learned. This is a very simple but very effective tools. We try to copy the process and the process from the from the Yijing plant, and we try to make the small steps forward. This task we start to make 2 years before until SOP. Now we will see for Ningbo plant we have more than 270 small steps, small improvements compared with the Yijing plant. One other important issue is organization. As I mentioned, that in all my team, it's 100% new employee below manager level. I have 5 logistics managers in different areas, and before that, it's 100% new employees. And how we can survive with such a young team, it's very important to have a very efficient organization as a logistic overall. We have the plant logistics, you can see that I am here, but with the central logistics support, we have all the functions in central. It's easier for the plants to launch. And as I know, it's the central, decentral organization, it is not new, but which is new is we directly report to the central, it's not report to the plant, at least from OEM. I think this is the first plant, the first OEM I see in this model. The other plants, plant logistics is more close to the plant, it's not more close to the central logistics. We have furthermore highlights innovations. I will not go through them all. And here I have one overview. What we've done before is, firstly, we have supply chain design. We try to make early involvement. We enhance the supplier park. We try to make the new inbound solutions, including the river and trains. And we try to optimize infrastructures in the very early stage. And in the in-house parts, we try to make the automation. We make the standards concept align with the infrastructures. We're planning for every part. Yeah. And for the packaging, we are trying to make the standards. For the management, the organization, the standardization, lessons learned, and training are essentials for us. Okay, I think that's all for my presentation. Thank you.
Okay, many thanks, Joe. I think that was a really comprehensive overview of some of the innovations that just the Ningbo plant, and also I think that apply across not only Shanghai Volkswagen, but also some global concepts there in terms of the modular layouts of the plant, and so really interesting stuff. Look forward to picking up further on the Q&A. But before we do that, I'd like to invite Dr. Lockstrom up now for his presentation.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, pleasure to be here. Happy to have you among the audience. Whereas Jojo's presentation was pretty much about the present, I will actually pretty much skip that in my presentation and instead focus on the past and the future. My presentation will be more at the, let's say, higher level of abstraction. Looking at, what are the drivers, the key drivers that shape, the changes that we see in the Chinese industry landscape. But before I do that, I just want to say a few words about Nordic International Management Institute that I'm representing. I guess not that many of you have heard of it. There's a good reason for that, and that's because it's fairly new. It was founded in 2010. Based out of Xindu, which is a suburb of Chengdu. Today it's a full-blown campus covering about 25,000 square meters. It's a 200 million RMB investment. And there we do executive education programs, open enrollment programs. We also do in-house training and also host MBA class visits as well. Among our faculty, we have professors from world-renowned business schools like CIBS, Harvard, INSEAD, IMD, and so on and so forth. And at the lower left-hand corner, you can see some of the clients that we have done training for in the past. So I won't spend too much more time on that, but if you happen to be around Chengdu, I very much welcome you to come and take a look at our campus. It's really, really nice. Okay, anyway, so the agenda for my presentation here today is, as I mentioned, I'm going to talk about, what are the key drivers behind the changes in the Chinese economy. Also talk about, what are the implications, from a sourcing and a manufacturing point of view. And also draw some analogies to the developments that we've seen in more developed parts of the world and apply that to a Chinese context and so to say hypothesize a little bit about the future, what can we expect from the future. So I won't focus that much on neither automotive nor logistics because I know that you're all experts in these areas anyway, so you heard a lot about that already, so I will change my so to say, stick to slightly different thread. So, but I hope that you will find it interesting nevertheless. I think one of the key issues when we talk about, changes in an economy is, and when running any kind of business, I mean, what companies tend to care about most is cost. No doubt about it. We have been doing studies and research for almost a decade now, looking at factors, why companies come to China in the first place. And, you always see things like, getting access to new suppliers, getting access to new markets, accessing new technologies, and so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, it usually always boils down to cost. Cost matters. And in recent years, there's been a lot of discussion, is this end of, the Chinese, phenomenon as a world production base for the world. A lot of talk about, the increasing labor costs, which in some people's opinions are getting out of control completely. And it's true that the labor costs in China, the increases are very, very high. As you can see here, since year 2001, the annual average salary increase in the manufacturing sector has hovered around 15%. Also, what is interesting to see is that the salary increases they correlate fairly strongly with the economy as such. You can see there's a dip after 2007 in the wake of the global financial crisis. So it means when the general economy is bad, salary hikes are not as strong. But then the question is also, why are the labor costs so high? So if we're looking at, China right now, roughly somewhere between 10 to 15%, whereas the overall economy is growing by somewhere between 7 to 8% per year. And the question for that, as far as we have figured out, is that in the last decades, GDP growth in China has been fairly volatile. Yes, since 2000 and early 2000, yes, the annual GDP growth rate has been somewhere around 15 up to 20%. I think in the early 2000s it was something like 17%, something like that. But every now and then you also have periods where growth rate, throughout history has been very, very low. There have been periods of contraction. The problem is, in terms of people's mentality is that, once you have got a salary increase of, let's say, 15%, that sort of say becomes the gold standard for all future salary increases, so to say. So once you got 15%, next year, even though economy in general is performing less well, your company is performing less well, you still accept to get the same kind of salary increase. So this is sort of the problem that it's like in general taxes in society. It's fairly easy to raise taxes. You usually get a lot of complaints and so on, but once you have raised taxes, it's very difficult to reduce taxes again in good times, for instance, when the government runs at a surplus, simply because the whole system adapts to the new level. Same applies with salaries. So also, if we compare to salaries in urban areas versus the more rural areas, also very notable differences. So it's roughly a factor 3 between workers' salaries in urban areas compared to rural areas. And this difference has actually increased over time. This is a general observation in China that economic inequality is on the rise. It's been increasing. Richer get richer. Poor get also richer, but not at the same pace. So this is also something which fuels the the push to move manufacturing and sourcing toward the Chinese inland. Also, I mean, if you look at the price hikes in RMB terms, very high. But if we also consider the exchange rate effects, we can conclude that Chinese labor cost has quadrupled since 2005. That's quite interesting. So right now we see appreciation of the yuan to the USD by roughly 37% since 2005. You see some periods where the exchange rate was locked in by the Chinese central bank, mainly due to the tough economic times during the global financial crisis. More recently as well, you see a bit of a dip in the exchange rate, which is hypothesized to be an intervention by the Chinese central bank in order to curb the inflow of hot money into China. The question is, how much further will it go? I remember back in roughly 10 years ago, the experts said that the yuan was undervalued by roughly 30 to 40%, and now it's appreciated by almost 40%. So the question is, how much further will it go? My hypothesis is that it's sort of reached an inflection point right now, and it will not increase that massively as we've seen in the past. If we look at, go back to the discussion about labor cost in China, it's really standing out of the crowd. You can see for yourself the different countries in this comparison. The reason, how you should read this chart, you should not read it interpret it like labor costs are equal in 2000. That's not the case. This is to compare to how each individual country has developed compared to itself during this period. So in terms of China, it's increased by an average of 16% per year, which is really a lot, compared to other countries. The question is, does this matter? Anyone? Is this really, really bad for China? Does this impact competitiveness of China? Anyone? Labor cost is one thing, but what matters at the end of the day is actually productivity. Meaning that, how much do you have to pay to get something out at the end of the day? And again, here it's very interesting to see how China stack up to other countries. So even though China has become much, much more expensive, it's also become much, much more productive, generating much, much more output. For every yuan you put in, you get a much, much more yuan generated in returns at the end of the day. And this is what we can see here. So that despite the labor cost increases, productivity has gone up dramatically for China, but also India. And I think most interestingly also for United States. So despite all the doomsday prophecies about the death of manufacturing in United States, they're to quite large extent unjustified. This also raises the question: have too many jobs been offshored from United States and Europe to countries in Asia and elsewhere? So what we conclude is that China still remains competitive. Again, this is about the past. We don't know what this chart will look like, in 1, 3, 5, 10 years ahead in time. Maybe it will be totally different. Maybe then China is at the bottom. We don't know. But for the time being, productivity has outstripped labor cost. So if we look at the trend, though, it's on the rise, although a little bit volatile. So we'll see. Time will tell. Anyway, the wage differential that we see in China has also led to this, so to say, push toward the central western part of China. Here are some results from a survey that we did ourselves last year, where we let respondents rank the importance of different regions of China. As you can see here, this is a, sort of say, subjective measure, perceived importance of geographic regions in China. And this is the perceived change over the next 5-year period. So here we can basically see that regions like Chongqing, Chengdu, Hohhot in Inner Mongolia, etc., are perceived to increase in perceived importance by 24%, 21%, and so on and so forth. Whereas the more mature regions in coastal part of China are expected to actually decline in importance. That doesn't mean that they will not be important. Economic activity will still be concentrated in the 3 key economic regions of China: Yangtze River Delta, Pearl River Delta in the south, and the Bohai Rim region in the north. And this situation will persist also 5 years ahead in time, according to our estimates. But if you look at the relative change in importance, where the additional growth will come, then we're talking more about places like Chongqing, Chengdu, and so on and so forth. So what kind of impact will this have on manufacturing? Well, I mean, labor costs are going up. They will probably, continue to go up because it's salary increases like inflation. They're mainly based on expectations. So in order to reduce the labor cost increases, there has to be some sort of economic shock, whatever that could be. We can only speculate about that. But what is required in order to remain competitive is be able to increase the output, increase in productivity in manufacturing plants, and so on and so forth. So basically what will happen is pretty much what we have seen taking place in more advanced economies like EU, United States, Japan, Korea, etc., etc. So we will see a less reliance on manual labor. We'll see high degree of assembly automation, higher degree of process automation, also the ability for faster prototyping like 3D printing, better data, better analytics to be able to make better decisions faster, fewer platforms, more standardization, even more than what we've seen in the past. It's, of course, applies very much to automotive. Fewer brands, question mark. Well, everyone says, there's not enough room for, even 10 OEM brands in the world. And I mean, in China, we see an opposite trend. More brands, coming into existence, especially now with the regulation about the new JV brands, domestic JV brands like Sonora for BMW and so on and so forth. So this is opposite to what economic theory would suggest would happen. So, of course, politically motivated, but from economic point of view, it doesn't make sense. Also more strategic orientation, since consumer preferences are different in different parts of China. Purchasing power is different in different parts of China. So we'll see more, let's say, multi-tiered strategies of the automotive OEMs in China in order to appeal to more, let's say, granular consumer segments, being able to more effectively communicate what the different brands stand for. What makes it a Geely different from Chery, for instance, in terms of value. And also a shift from the BRIC countries to the MIST countries. So, I mean, in the past, Brazil, Russia, India, and so on and so forth, they all have their respective problems. So I would say that right now, in the past, it used to be more of a China basis. So if you say, okay, let's pursue global sourcing, that usually means China sourcing. Today, when companies are developing their sourcing strategies and evaluating suppliers, China is not the only country on the list. So that means there are more blips on the radar when companies go out looking for suppliers. So, countries that we have seen less developed, less attractive in the past have suddenly become more attractive. Countries like Indonesia, Malaysia again, South Korea, which is, so to say, officially a high-cost country, but very, very advanced, sophisticated manufacturing capabilities that we will see more of as well. If you look at the development of China manufacturing, I think if you look far ahead into the future, it will go in the same direction as we've seen in advanced economies, as I mentioned earlier. It's in Germany, developed by Fraunhofer Institute, together with some of the biggest German multinationals like Siemens, Bosch, Volkswagen, etc., have developed a concept called Industry 4.0. So representing a fourth industrial revolution. If it will be a revolution, we can only sort of say determine in hindsight. We will see, again, time will tell. But Industry 1.0 was basically, the mechanization of production, less reliance on human labor. Industry 2.0 was, the specialization and division of labor, the production line essentially. Industry 3.0 was mainly about, automation, replacement of human workers with robots, basically. Industry 4.0 takes this whole concept one step further and even, decrease the reliance of human intervention, with the ultimate goal of completely eliminate human beings from factories. When that happens, labor cost advantage no longer exists, meaning that production can be undertaken anywhere in the world in a very competitive fashion. So I think what has really, driven this kind of development is the emergence of pervasive computing, basically meaning that, you have computers everywhere. In the TV here, in this little device here, in your mobile phone, in your fridge, there are computers everywhere. Wherever you have a computer, and right now also with the advancements of wireless technologies, all these kind of things can start communicating with each other. And also the sophistication on the software side, the ability to gather data, to process data, and not only providing the analytics, but actually doing the analytics and making decisions on this information. That is what we will see in the future. So basically the ICT-enabled manufacturing, you can look at it along three dimensions back, basically. One is so-called smart factories, which I mentioned earlier, completely eliminates human beings out of the production facilities. One example is the Japanese company Fanuc, Fanuc, they are making, industrial robots, for instance, for automotive. They have robots that make robots without human intervention. The concept, it's called lights out factory. Basically meaning because the manufacturing or assembly process is totally automated. There are no human beings inside the factory, so you don't need lights. So the robots making robots work by themselves. Also virtual factories, meaning that, in the past, manufacturing has been pretty much about, having a big monolithic production plant, so to say. With virtual factories basically means that you have smaller production units that can work together, collaborate in an autonomous fashion, and form a larger production unit without physically being under the same roof. Also, when it comes to digital factories, basically digitization of information. Everything that used to be on paper, codified on paper, or let's say tacit knowledge among human beings, is becoming digitized, meaning it can be transferred between different production units, different production cells, between equipment, can be processed, analyzed for decision making. So if we look at the future of automotive manufacturing, I'm not sure if you heard about this car model. It's called Irby. And all the body parts are actually 3D printed. It's made from 50 larger pieces. And the maiden voyage will go from San Francisco to New York on one tank, 4 gallons. All done, in a 100% automated fashion. No human supervision during the manufacturing process. Of course, 3D printing is still very slow. It took 2,500 hours to produce these 3D printed body parts. But I think nevertheless, it's a learning lesson, in the direction where we're going. Some of you might laugh about it and say it's not competitive, Yes, today it's not. But who knows about tomorrow when you can speed up this process, let's say 100-fold. When you can do 3D printing of composite materials, various kinds of alloys, etc., etc. How will that influence how we're manufacturing, assembling cars in the future? Also, another example is, speaking about 3D printing, for instance. There are now 3D printers that make 3D printers. So you have production equipment which replicates itself. This is the kind of things we will see more of, for sure. So just to summarize, we see that the rising labor costs in especially coastal China will push manufacturing toward the Chinese inland, to these areas I mentioned earlier, Chengdu, Chongqing, etc., etc. Also, due to the yuan appreciation, export demand in China will go down further. It's steadily on the decline. Last year it was overtaken by the service economy. China today is officially a service economy, not predominantly manufacturing economy. This will continue. Service economy is skyrocketing. Manufacturing is steadily on a gentle slope downwards. We see that also the rising labor costs will increase the need for automation in Chinese production plants. Also, lower value-adding manufacturers that do not automate, that do not consolidate, they will exit the market. Potential source for structural unemployment in the short to medium term. But higher level of automation will also spur plant innovation, become a source for new ideas, abilities, to increase competitiveness even further and also offset other competitive disadvantages that in the past were advantages. That was everything from my side. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Lockstrom. Very interesting. I mean, I think the two presentations next to each other give quite an interesting perspective, looking, as Martin kind of explained, at the efficiency requirements for today and the immediate kind of future that Volkswagen has mapped out with its plant and efficiencies, and then, you know, Dr. Lockstrom giving us this perspective of what's kind of led up to that and what we might see in the future, and what we already see, in fact, with robots making robots and printers making printers. Soon, I guess, we'll see trucks delivering trucks and you know, automation across the board. So a lot of interesting food for thought, some of it high level, some of it going right down to the plants and really affecting the day-to-day jobs of people in this room. But obviously, it's not all robots yet, and we still had some people in this industry and then some interesting human resources challenges, as Jojo pointed out, with managing a very high turnover and a young staff and all that comes with that. So thanks again to both panelists for their presentations and giving us a lot of things to think about there. We've got some time for Q&A, at least 15 minutes. So the floor is open to follow up on either presentation. We'll have mics going around. You can ask in English or Chinese. We have simultaneous translation. So any questions from the floor? Right in the front here.
我是陈刚，就是刚才一直在。
My name is Chen Gang. I've been asking lots of questions. Today I have a question for Mr. Jojo. In your presentation, you mentioned some new technology like ATV, small vehicles, and belt and conveyors. And my question is about the small vehicles. How many you are using to cover how many parts of your factory? And secondly, your conveyors, is it conveying standardized boxes or non-standardized? Our small vehicles, we convey SPS components. For example, a position in assembly workshop, they will have a plan for materials, and the small vehicles will carry the components to the assembly line. And in Ningbo factory, we strengthened IS components conveying by the small vehicles. We have 10 lines to carry the IS components, including front and back bumpers, and also case to case, and from supplier to be conveyed to dock, and then to the position in the assembly line. We overcame lots of challenges. In-house, if it's purely in-house, then it's easily to control. But for GS, because you may have bigger sized components, you may also have other factors that the accuracy from outside suppliers may not be as we required, and so that's a challenge. Secondly, about the empty containers, we are using we use a KRT to be conveyed on the conveyor belt. Only KRT. It's pretty small, actually. Thank you.
Any questions? Right in the back.
My name is Jason. I'm from Jeffco. I have a question for Jojo. My question is regarding the implementation of Milcron. You mentioned that in your plant you have implemented Milcron. Can you please share with me your key challenge or difficulty when you implement the Milcron? And if possible, can you share with us the scope of your milk run? Is the supplier in Shanghai region be covered in your milk run project? Thank you.
So actually, I want to clarify one thing, that we always say that we are doing milk run since probably 10 years before, but we try to redefine the names. That in the past, we are making kind of centralized 3PL forwarder, but the exactly definition for the milk run is we define the time window, we define the route, and we execute every day the same route, go to the same supplier, pick up the same parts. So with the new definition that most of the parts are not milk run parts, but we say it's 3PL operating parts and delivered by the 3PL. But for all the parts inside the supplier park, we are trying to make milk run, which means we define exactly that at which time we pick up which parts from which supplier and deliver to which dock. Yeah. So I think what you are asking are the both scenario. I mean the exactly milk run or the other only run by 3PL. From the targets of ourselves, we really prefer to implement more integrated transportation, because that make more opportunities to make the integrations. Also easier for our in-plant logistics to control the delivery qualities. Yeah. About the scope, currently for Nemo plant, we have different inbound methods. As I mentioned, we have a GIS, GIT. For the GIS and GIT, it's mainly point-to-point. We don't need to collect from different areas. And inside the supplier park, we have already over 55% of the volume. If we consider all the GIT and the GIS, it's over, I think, 70 or 75% of volume. What we are talking about, the milk run, is for the rest of, I think, 30% of the volume. And in the rest 30%, I think more than 50% is now operating by the 3PLs. Yeah, and I think this is your question, that how is the range we cover by the so-called milk run. Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions from the audience? Jojo, you mentioned in your presentation, I think, a 70% reduction in the cost in the optimization before. Can you clarify a little bit what you're referring there? That the potential optimization is 70% greater from your old plants, or just a little bit?
No, that's based on the investigation. Mm-hmm. That before the nomination starts, we have some intended suppliers. Then, so in the past, logistics do not interfere that part. But for the new project, especially for Changsha and for Xinjiang project, we try to involve in early stage, and we investigate all the potential suppliers who deliver the big parts. And with the first investigation, if they deliver from the original location, that was the base. Yeah, then I think the major optimization, there are three major measurements. One is we have the new inbound methods. In the past, it's 100% from the truck. Yeah, but for Urumqi, we start to involve the railway delivery, and for CPC, for Changsha plants, we have the river delivery. I think this is the major part, and the second is localization. In the past, we say localization is compared with the CKD material, but this means the localization to Changsha area. I think this is the second biggest measurements. The third, I think, is the packaging optimization. With those three optimization methods, we achieved a reduction of 70% of the original price.
Okay, so mode, localization, packaging makes a huge difference there.
Right.
Kind of following on things that both presentations touched on, obviously you're mentioning a plant with a very high turnover ratio, young staff, so you have different strategies to survive in that atmosphere. And obviously with rising labor costs, are you using more agency labor, more temporary staff, in terms of how you're managing the labor there? And maybe, Martin, you can sort of comment on what's happening in China across manufacturing in this area too.
So in SVW, the most of staff, the working level, we outsourced. So we have very strong partnership with some 3PLs. But for our own employees, of course, we employ them. The strategy, but I think the difficulty happens wherever located people. The people in SVW or in 3P, we have the same problem. The problem is there. So but we try to avoid the problem with the, I think, standardization and the standardization with the process, with IT system, and we have the training methods to keep the refresh people trained in very short term to a good quality.
I can comment on that as well. I mean, working with numerous multinationals here in China in the automotive industry, we see a significant trend shift. I mean, it's in the past typical functions that are being outsourced, you know, for a long time. You know, accounting and, you know, these kind of things, marketing, etc., etc. We see a really strong trend in terms of the demand for temp staffing in areas like quality management, supplier development, these kind of things where there is a, let's say, fixed term need, you know, not necessarily on a full-time basis, where companies come to us and ask if, you know, we can you know, organize or you know, help out with temp staffing in such areas, and that is something that we see very strongly, and we really see that, you know, in the past you could afford, so to say, yeah, you have a need for, let's say, a half-time position, you know, for 6 months, something like that, and in the past, you know, labor costs didn't matter that much, and, you know, probably, you know, when that project is over, there's definitely a demand, you know, to put this guy somewhere else, or, you know, there will be continued need, something like that. That kind of thinking has changed dramatically over the last few years. Now it's really, you know, do we really need it, you know, for how long time, you know, in terms of capacity utilization, these kind of things that were less relevant in the past are becoming much more relevant today. That's a very strong trend that we see.
Okay. There's something more I need to add.
Sure.
I think the other thing we're making is trying to reduce the positions. As I mentioned, also Martin mentioned about the automation. Yeah, we implement more automation, for example, the conveyor system or AGVs or the conveyor for the empties, as I mentioned. Yeah, this is one method. The other is not only logistics, but the whole plant. We are trying to make the process leaner. So in SVW, we are running kind of we call 3P workshop. What means 3P is a product, process, and in parts. In the very early stage, we trying to discuss for every part how we deliver to where, and how the assembly shop guys, they will assemble those parts. And with all those workshops, the assembly shop and the logistics, we can really save people. We are discussing part by part, tact by tact, and try to reduce people. And this is for the new project launch. And for the existing project, we have the methods of the KVP. It's a continuous improvement process. And with all the efforts, the productivity is going up every year, I think by 5% of SVW in general. So this is also one method. We try to reduce the needs of the people.
Again, a pretty kind of shining example of exactly what Martin's graphs were showing, that how productivity had to rise faster than labor in a way for China to stay that competitive. I think we have a question on the floor here.
So, question for Martin, and around the conversation of productivity. You know, when we look at some of our Go West plants or the interior plants or new plants in general, right, productivity is normally lower for a certain period of time. But just overall in general, as you look at Asia Pacific, what are the, I guess, when you compare countries, what are the trends do you see? Like, what countries do you see as, you know, having a faster percent of rising productivity versus other countries, and how do you see that shaping out, is my first question. And then the second one, when you have a world where computers build computers, what are the implications that you guys see for logistics providers and logistics supply chains?
I mean, basically, you know, the key drivers to productivity, it's twofold. It's like the knowledge and skills of people, So you see in economies where you put a lot of attention to education, there you see a very rapidly increase in productivity. That's on the one hand. On the other hand, the second factor is technology. So a country's ability to get access to adopt and implement new technology, that's the second lever. And if combined, you have amplifying effect, so to say. So I think in terms of China, they have had the best of both worlds. It's probably no other country in the world where people pay so much attention to education, putting so much investment into education, even though, of course, the Chinese education system has its weaknesses, but that is changing as well. But also China's ability to get access to new technology and adopt that technology, that has helped China really a lot. So I think different countries, they are at various different stages, so to say. I mean, India is another good example, where you also have a large pool of educated labor, also very strong IT capabilities. Of course, there are some pretty good manufacturing capabilities as well. But I think India and China, they're prime examples, whereas others are, lagging behind, in other regions of Southeast Asia and so on and so forth. But now when they're starting to receive more attention, I think we will see also accelerated growth in many of those areas, like Indonesia, Vietnam, Cambodia, more recently Myanmar as well. So they will probably take similar trajectories, but if they can keep the same pace as China, it very much depends on, I would say, education. I would say in terms of your second question related to logistics, I think what we will see, the advancements in IT will reduce the need for, as I mentioned, human intervention. So it not only applies to manufacturing plants themselves, but the whole process from a customer places an order, an end customer places an order, until it's being components are being sourced, the product is being made, it's being delivered. This whole chain will be automated to increase higher extent than what we see today. Not only in terms of equipment, computers generating the data, but also doing the analytics. That's the next level, which is also becoming increasingly automated as well. Like if you speak about e-commerce, you're gathering end consumer data, point of sales data, crunching the numbers, and maybe launching sales campaigns based on that analytics. That will also become more automated in the future. So constantly reducing the cycle times that we see along the supply chain.
Okay. Well, we're hoping that there's not too many people eliminated, so that we can continue to have automotive logistics conferences and not a room full of robots or something like that. So, any other questions from the audience right now? Maybe another question from my side for Joe. In terms of, you talked about planning the plan for every part and how the delivery to the line and thinking through to keep it as lean as possible. What sort of changes in let's say parameters have you seen for Ningbo or other new plants versus some of the old ones in terms of Kanban versus sequencing versus kitting? Or have there been changes in the amount? Are you using more sequencing, less sequencing, more kitting? Or is it depending on the model, or if you have any specific trends you would point to?
So generally, we are implementing the so-called new logistics concept. We have all those standard modules. We have the in-house sequencing. We have we call it Pareto laws. That means we deliver directly to the line. We have different standard methods. Yeah. But how to implement, how many we implement, really depends on plant to plant and product by product. Which I also want to mention that first of all, it depends on the product. If the product the complexity is high, which means in one takt there will different varieties of parts. For logistics, we cannot put all those parts beside the line. So in that case, we need more sequencing. But for the simple product, probably more parts we can put directly to the line, then we need less sequencing. But anyway, in the new logistics concept, we have our standard methods from the inbound then to the line. The general things will be we have general some gist parts. For gist parts, there are some delivered to the dock and then delivered by AGVs, and there are some we deliver to the conveyor system, such as the tire assembly and the seats. The supplier, they will load to a truck with the automatic conveyor, then connect to our plants, then deliver it directly to the takt. Then we have the methods of JIT. And for the JIT, we plan for every time window. Then for the JIT parts, we will have the planned route, then deliver through, we call it Bahnhof, it's a train, small train station. Then according to this planned time window, delivered to the line. And there are some other parts we deliver to the supermarket to make the sequencing job, and then deliver to the line. Those are all standard modules, which we try to implement in all the plants. But for new plants, because of the new infrastructure, it's more convenient. And also from the cost perspective, it's lower because everything is in-house. The original one in Anting or in Nanjing, we have external warehouse. So the whole process, we have the same similar function, but there are more operations inside.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thanks for that. Any other questions from the audience? We have a couple of minutes before lunch, but maybe you're all getting hungry. Okay, well, if there's no more questions, then I think this has been a very interesting discussion. Again, after lunch, I think we'll have a few more not similar, but presentations also looking around plant innovations and efficiencies. So I think there's actually more to follow onto the things we've been raising here. But I want to thank both of our presenters and panelists. I think they gave great presentations and took time to answer the questions, so thank you. Thank you. We'll have lunch next door. Just a reminder again about the evaluation forms which are on your desks. Please do fill them in and get them to us before the end of the day or before you leave. We still are in split streams next session. Again, we're continuing the theme here versus CFLP. At the end of the day, we're coming all back together for a VIP panel. I believe we have Delphi, we have Shanghai General Motors, and Fiat Chrysler. So stick around all day, please. Thank you.